and you're welcome to Literati, where we delve into the world of literature, African stories, and showcasing the brightest and rising African storytellers, poets, and writers. I'm your host, Judith Atibi. On today's show, we'll be reviewing the highly anticipated memoir, An Imperfect Storm. So, when you think of the year 2020, what immediately comes to mind is the pandemic, social distancing, lockdowns, and an infectious disease that was not only spreading fast, but countries and the world's healthcare community grappled to not only contain, but understand its nature, origins, and how to save humanity. So as world leaders and its healthcare systems prepared for the worst, the most populous Black nation on earth, with over 200 million people, with a waning healthcare system plagued with brain drain resulting in a poor doctor-to-patient ratio, infrastructural challenges, underdevelopment, lack of funding, poor working conditions and environment, we must, as a nation, Nigeria, beat the odds and prepare for what lies ahead. And so to steer the course and champion the nation for what lies ahead, one man whose journey, one of detours and discovery and destiny, Dr. Chikwe Ihekweazu, the then Director General of Nigeria Center for Disease Control, is faced with a Herculean task of preparing the nation for what is to come. What unfolds is an imperfect storm. And that is the title of the book we'll be reviewing today. On the program, my guests are co-authored by husband and wife duo, Chikwe and Vivianne Ihekweazu. An Imperfect Storm is a memoir that recounts both authors' personal experience, powering through the eye of the storm of a pandemic, but most importantly, documents an important piece of Nigeria's history and by extension, the world. But before we get into the review, let me introduce my guests to you, Chikwe Ihekweazu and Vivianne Ihekweazu. Chikwe Ihekweazu is an infectious disease epidemiologist, I'm horrible with that word, and a public health leader with over 25 years of experience in senior leadership roles at the World Health Organization, the Nigeria Center for Disease Control, and the South African National Institute for Communicable Diseases, and also the UK's Health Protection Agency and Germany's Robert Koch Institute. He's a recipient of the Officer of the Order of the Niger OON, awarded by President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria for his service. His wife, Vivianne Ihekweazu, is also an accomplished health communications professional with over 20 years of experience as a managing director of Nigeria Health Watch and a health communication and advocacy organization based in Nigeria. She works tirelessly to structure health communication strategies that strengthen health advocacy in Nigeria using informed commentary, intelligence, and insights on the Nigerian health sector. And she drives change on topics that matter to her, including nutrition, maternal, newborn, and child health, as well as routine immunization, sexual and reproductive health and rights, and also health security. And so I have quite the panel today with me. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome my guest to the program.
Judith, great to be on your show. Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming on. I want to say I am so happy to do this with you. And again, congratulations on a wonderful, riveting memoir that is so revealing. And I think it's a proper document of history that we need at this time. And so thank you for going on this journey. And might I ask, let me start by asking, at what point during the pandemic did you sit back and say, darling, or dear wife, or dear husband, let's start writing a memoir? I think it's time. I'm going to throw the question at you, but I will go with lady first.
Thank you for that question, Judith. I wouldn't particularly say there was a point in time when we decided in the rush of 2020 to start writing a book. I think what happened, as Chikwe will tell you, every night he would come home early in the morning, very late at night, and I'd listen to his experience. And I just felt at that point in time, or we felt at that point in time, that there was so much happening. And one thing we're not often good at in Nigeria is sharing our experiences. And I remember thinking back to, the Ebola outbreak and how much was not written about people's experiences. So I just literally, we both started talking about it, and I would document every night, well, at least as often as possible, things he would say. And that's really how it started. There wasn't a clear structure. I just started making notes of things he was saying on a sometimes daily, weekly basis.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, so the book started from her. And that's why she's rightly a co-author today.
Right.
I might wish to write a book, want to write a book, but there would not be a book if not for the notes she kept.
Wow, that is amazing and very, very intuitive on your part. That's women's sixth sense. We always have that, the sixth sense. So, what was the journey like writing this memoir? In terms of for the both of you, would you say it was tedious or reflective at some moments, or was it time where you just like, I'm tired, and this is a journey I've done enough. I think it's enough. Let someone else tell the story. What was the journey like for you? I'll start with you, sir.
We had that first start, so it was incredible. Then, I got this appointment to move to Geneva.
Yes.
And so we were in different cities most of the time. So this really filled up our weekends, right? It filled up our weekends. We were in different cities, so, we would work through the weekends. This is a 2-year project, until it got to the stage of actually being in a state I could send it to our great publishers, Masobe Books. So,
right.
Yeah, it's, but I would say it brought us together a bit because we spent a lot of time talking.
And of course, a lot of weekends were spent in pajamas. I wouldn't say it was a simple process. I mean, I'm not an instinctive author. I mean, I write as part of the work I do. Mm-hmm. But writing a book is a completely different thing because it does take up a lot of your time.
Yes.
But because it was a personal experience, it was a bit easier. And you have to almost integrate it with everything else that you're doing. And we weren't sure how long it would take us, to be honest. Mm-hmm. But we wanted it to be something that reflected what we wanted to say, using our voice. Using
We're very self-critical ourselves.
Yes.
Yeah, well, that's what happens when we're great minds. I think that's a curse of being great minds and being achievers and overachievers. You're very critical, hypercritical. And sometimes we don't forgive ourselves, if that makes any sense. In the book, at the core of the book is a love story, which I wish I had enough time to get into because I'm a sucker for love. But most importantly was, a deep reflection on your parental influence as well. And there was a statement that you made there, I would not be who I am if not for the tree that I fell off. I'm paraphrasing, but the tree I fell off from. I thought that was in fact, a highlighter. I went around the office like, who has a highlighter? I need to highlight this very quickly. But yes, you talked about your parents' influence. So just for the sake of our audience, can you share more about, your background and your experience and just the unique experiences shaped you to becoming the Dr. Chikwe Ihekweazu?
No, I tell the story. My father left Nigeria on a ship in the mid-50s, sponsored by his community, right, to get an education. In that journey, he met my mom. They met in Germany. They were in Germany during the terrible Nigerian Civil War, Biafra War, no matter how you call it. They came back here with an urge to rebuild. And in Nsukka, they found a community, right, on campus of just great colleagues. And then that shaped me, right? And just that opportunity of living through a set of parents that were so enamored about the dream of a country that they were part of building. They were alive, we got our independence, they participated in the journey. And so, that shaped a lot of how I felt about the country growing up and my enthusiasm.
To serve.
Absolutely. And to live in Nigeria. And not just to serve, but really to participate in its fabric and to be of this country.
Because, with your journey, there's always a time that you can see just how you retrace your step back every single time you're retracing your step back. And there was also a time where it fell on your lap, the appointment with the NCDC, and you took it with no questions asked. And you supported him every step of the way. Were there times where like, okay, this is enough, all right? It's enough. I need you now to focus on us. Was there, there has to be times like that.
I think actually, casting back to when we first met and, we got married, our life literally started off like that. In that we got married and literally within, 1 month, he got posted to do his training in another part of the UK. Yeah. So we ended up living almost 2 years in separate cities. We would go and spend weekends together, obviously. And since then, to be honest, it literally has been a continuation of that. And then, when we moved to South Africa, it was he came home and was like, sweetheart, we've got something to tell you. And my reaction is, okay, where are we going to? And I think I've always been used to moving, but also he is very passionate for what he does. And I have always been passionate about supporting him. And I think throughout our marriage, that has informed the journey we've taken. So each move has come with a lot of benefits. And I think we've been very fortunate in places we've been able to live, I think, and we don't take it for granted at all.
Oh, what a
Yeah.
life. What a beautiful life.
Okay.
I was saying this before we went on air of how unbelievably envious I was of you, just reading about your background, and you were talking about how you grew up surrounded by prominent intellectuals and writers at the University of Nigeria in Nsukka. And that must have been inspiring, just having, the likes of Chinua Achebe and all of this persons around you and around your dinner table, in the evenings, and having very intellectual arguments. Those type of scenes, I saw them in Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie's book, but I didn't think somebody actually was living that life. So imagine my envy when I read that part. So how did these early experiences, with such influential figures, shape your intellectual curiosity and passion for knowledge?
Yeah, Judith, now in retrospect, it sounds very interesting, But in those days, I was upset. We had no TV. There was very little entertainment, on campus, there was nothing to do. So, that was entertainment, listening to my parents on the dinner tables with their friends. And it was a great community.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that simplicity of life, and I say today, no matter how wealthy we are in Nigeria, right, anyone is, it's hard to afford our children the lives we had on campus in Nsukka because it was open, it was free, there was very little crime, and there were just great people pushing every day. So being part of that, and it's true, Adichie's parents, I know them very well, Prof. Sanya, they were just normal people, right?
Yes.
Moving around campus in Peugeot 504 or 404 vehicles, and just sharing that community and building the future of they were building the future of our country.
And you also, I think that influenced you to also build a very significant history of our country as well, I would say. That's a compliment. You don't have to reply.
Well.
You're watching Literati right here on News Central TV. My guest today is Dr. Chikwe Ihekweazu and his wife, Mrs. Vivianne Ihekweazu. They are the author of Memoir and Imperfect Storm, and we're talking about just a journey in writing and, of course, their background into writing. When we come back on the other side, it's going to be about the themes of the book and, of course, the experience of the pandemic. Stay with us.
Africa needs its own storytellers, people who understand the continent because they're from it. People who know that news is more than just a conversation starter, it's our stories. Because these stories run deeper than headlines and segments. It's about digging deeper to get the facts and telling the human side of every single story, not just the echoes from foreign headlines and perspectives. It's time to take back our narratives and share them in our voices. The birth of Africa's New Age reporting, and this is where it begins, right here at News Central TV, with stories that put Africa first.
And you're watching News Central TV. It's Literati, so welcome back. So before the break, we're talking about the background and now it's time for me to get into this. And I want to ask you, sir, your role and experience in NCDC as Director General, during the time influenced this narrative of the book. And I've read it, and I know the answer, but for my viewers, why did you choose that time and just the experience of assuming that role to form the narrative for this book?
When we got into the pandemic, and luckily we had an organization, an institution that was prepared, we didn't know it was coming, but the 3 years I had up to it was just an incredible opportunity. I had got this appointment, I threw myself into it. You meet what you meet and when you're appointed into these places, but I pushed this team, we built, we had other outbreaks happening, and through that building process, new people recruited, young people that were energetic, new labs developed across the country. We just had a vision of a public health parastatal that should work for Nigeria, and then boom, we had the pandemic in 2020. So it wasn't like It was, a bit, when you think back now, it's almost like 3 years of preparation for the pandemic, but that's not what it was. It was 3 years of institution building. And then we were lucky. And that's really at the heart of the lessons of this book. That, we can't build a great country by wishing Nigeria to be great. We have to do the grind and build it. One institution, one power station, one company, one TV channel, one program at a time. And for each of those bits to be successful, takes the grind, the energy, and the collective energy of everyone involved in it.
In recounting the events, just leading to the nation's preparedness for COVID-19, you made a critical decision, very critical. And it's very interesting because I was working in media at the time. I was pretty much on radio. And so I knew, you only see the headlines, but you don't know what's behind the scenes. And so when you were sharing that in the book, I'm like, that's what happened. So in preparing, leading up to nation's preparedness, for COVID-19, you made a critical decision to bypass bureaucratic channels to ensure and secure funds as well. How difficult was it for you to make that decision? And what was the immediate reaction or response, given how, we are in our Nigeria and our rings of power or whatever it is.
To be honest, 99% of the time in government, we follow the hierarchy, we follow due process. It's how government works. It's how any bureaucracy works around the world. You have to go through the steps. But when you're confronted with a big challenge, and the fate of the country really lies on the decisions you take. Sometimes you make a decision and you apologize later. and at some point, that's the decision I made. There was too much at stake to wait for the bureaucracy to kick in.
Yes.
So I used other channels, got support from the leadership of our government. They were very supportive. They asked me to move. I moved, and we were able to deploy the resources that we needed. But it's not the advice I would say everyone should take all the time, because there are risks, and if it goes wrong, you're in trouble. But thankfully, I hope history joins me kindly.
I'm part of history, so I judge you kindly. Vivianne, let me come to you. I loved your chapter titled "A Partner for All Times," a promise and an oath and a decision that you made, and you have stayed stuck there all this while. And truly, you've been a partner for all times. But there must have come, with some serious challenges. Were there times, because we're women, were there times that you've had to, pause on things, or times that the children, the boys, had to, Ginika and Barak, they had to, feel like, oh, well, it's their turn now. How was it for you, to go through those challenges and be able to navigate? And if you just help us name a few of those challenges.
Okay, I mentioned before, when Chikwe and I started, when we got married, from the very onset, I realized at that early stage that he's very passionate about the work he does. And not just about the work he does, but really making a difference and contributing. And you have to be cognizant of that when you get married to somebody. What are the things that are important to them? And also likewise for myself. I've had a very varied career, starting from when I was in the UK. I worked in communications. And throughout, I've always had his full support in every single thing I've done. And that has to work. There has to be a symbiotic relationship in both of you knowing that you support each other in whatever you do. And transitioning through that, there were difficult times in terms of how busy he often was, raising our boys and living in different countries. But on the flip side, I would say that has afforded us with many different opportunities. And, being a partner for all times, you're on a journey. And there are ups and downs, there are positives and negatives. And the boys have always been centered to every single thing we've done, and every decision we've always taken has always factored in what is best for us as a family, what is best for the kids. And our kids are much, much, much better for it. He's always been very present in their lives, which is not always the case when someone is that busy.
Yeah.
And that, for me, there's no compromise on that.
Yeah.
The kids and the boys have to always come first. And I think, for us throughout, the different places we've lived, that's always been the case. And moving to Nigeria was very much what we had said almost when we got married, that we eventually wanted to come and raise our boys in Nigeria. It is so important that their kids are rooted in where they're from, so that wherever they go in the world, they always have that foundation. They always know where they're from. And that, I think, has supported us in everything that, we've done up until now.
Yeah, well, You just made me jealous. But also, he's a wonderful husband. I mean, that's a rhetorical question. I'm going to talk about that off air. But Vivianne, you just talked about your career and you being in the communication in the UK, and reading this book made me open my eyes to see the role that you also played during the COVID pandemic. Like, no one even knew, or just because we're behind the scenes, or rather we're not behind the scenes, we're only seeing this through the headlines and the news, we didn't realize how much you played in the background. And that was, you stepped into the role to help with communications as public perception and fear were significant challenges, especially with, stigmatization of certain groups, and of course, the misinformation and disinformation at that time. And so how did the NDCC help address this, misinformation with you steering that arm?
I'd say, starting off, government traditionally is not great at communicating. In a country, we often have a government that just tells people what they need to do without actually communicating and explaining it to them. I think one of the things that NCDC did from the very onset is actually having a communications team, both risk communications and also just corporate communications, letting people know what they're doing. So when the outbreak started, the team at NCDC was completely swamped in all different directions. And there was a very quick need to communicate. So they had an infrastructure already. And my organization was invited to support an existing team. And, they were very good in pulling in many different partners. We had Corona MS, Tony Blair Institute. There were many other organizations that were part of that communications team. And Nigeria Health Watch was just one of the partners that supported them. I mean, areas that we supported and things that we do up to today are things like around health misinformation. We see how, digital communications has proliferated. People have access to so many more digital channels. Social media has opened up the ability to communicate. And so what we supported in things like supporting with producing editorial, and also misinformation, getting ahead of the news so that the government is the one communicating and informing what people are thinking. Because if you don't do that, if you don't get ahead of it, then there are many other channels that people can get information from. And in health, that can have completely catastrophic consequences. So we were just one of many organizations that supported in communications.
And communications was indeed every press briefing every single day. And you were seeing Dr. Ihekweazu, and I'm like, this man is tired. We should leave this man alone. You was just wear your face mask. I mean, we're pressed for time, and we have to go and wrap up the show. But I want to say thank you. At the core of this book is leadership, collaboration, and to hear the call to serve, not just in the word, but serve with function. And that's what you did. So again, congratulations and thank you to the service. And
ask all your readers to read this book. It's a book about our country.
At the
heart of it.
It is. At the heart of it is a piece of our history. And so for everyone who's watching, make sure to go grab the book. It's An Imperfect Storm. It's out now. Everywhere that you get your book, go there to get it. It's written by Chikwe Ihekweazu and Vivianne Ihekweazu, husband and wife duo, and it's all about Nigeria and the history of Nigeria. Again, thank you so much for watching. Again, thank you so much.
Thank you very much for inviting us, Judith.
Until next time, it's bye for now. My name is Judith at TV. Thank you for watching. Bye now.
Bye.